For years, we've seen how Taehyung and JUNGKOOK share something unlike what we see with others. What happens between them isn't about being in front of cameras or creating scenes to get people talking. It's something that happens when they think no one is watching. Like that time Dispatch posted a video, Taehyung was right behind JUNGKOOK, wrapping his arms around him. What stands out isn't just Taehyung's gesture, but JUNGKOOK's reaction. He doesn't push him away, doesn't get uncomfortable, or try to change places. He just stays. This shows one thing clearly: Taehyung isn't invading any space JUNGKOOK doesn't want to share. Contrary to what some JUNGKOOKers say, who try to change the story to make Taehyung look like someone who forces situations, what's clear is that JUNGKOOK allows everything. Taehyung always seems attentive to him, close, attentive, and JUNGKOOK gives him the freedom to be there. The idea that these things are part of the show doesn't fit with the way they happen. When someone acts for the cameras, there's a different energy, there are glances toward the audience, forced postures. But when Taehyung is with JUNGKOOK, his approach doesn't change whether there are cameras or not. This is especially noticeable in moments when they didn't know they were being recorded, like in the clip posted by Dispatch. The closeness isn't faked or measured. JUNGKOOK doesn't act like someone playing a role. And that's what makes this scene so valuable to Taehyung fans. Furthermore, if you analyze other times when Taehyung is close to JUNGKOOK, you can see there's no rejection. Taehyung approaches, touches, accompanies, and JUNGKOOK not only stays, but often responds with a gesture, a smile, or simply by remaining silent. There's something powerful about that way of being together without words. The gaze between two people can say more than words. When you carefully observe how Taehyung and JUNGKOOK look at each other, you can't ignore what's happening. During one of the singing rehearsals, JUNGKOOK can't stop staring at Taehyung. His eyes focus on him as if everything else ceases to matter. He doesn't look at the others, he doesn't look at the instruments, he doesn't get lost in his own thoughts. He's completely focused on Taehyung. That's not something you can control. No one maintains that kind of gaze without a strong reason. What makes this scene stand out is its naturalness. JUNGKOOK doesn't act as if he's being recorded. He does it without thinking, as if it's a habit. And the same goes for Taehyung. He also looks at him in a different way, as if only JUNGKOOK existed at that moment. These glances aren't a one-time occurrence. They've happened many times, in different situations. Whether in rehearsals, on stage, or behind the scenes, their eyes search each other without anyone directing them. They don't do it to show something to the audience, or to attract attention. He also smiles slightly, as if Taehyung is reassuring him. Taehyung, for his part, reacts the same way, remaining calm only when he's close. When two people are acting, their gestures change depending on who's watching. They're trying to show something, highlight an emotion, or create a striking scene. But Taehyung and JUNGKOOK aren't going for that. They repeat gestures that seem part of their everyday lives. The constant glances, the gentle approaches, and the small touches, everything happens effortlessly. That's what makes it clear that their connection isn't part of a spectacle. There's one thing that's clearly repeated every time Taehyung interacts with other members: JUNGKOOK's immediate reaction. It's not a slight annoyance, it's not a blank stare. It's direct attention, a way of marking territory without words. JUNGKOOK observes, approaches, changes his expression, and often even shifts his body to get in the way, to make it clear that Taehyung is with him. This behavior isn't casual or spontaneous. It appears when Taehyung laughs with someone else, when another person touches him too confidently, or even when the attention isn't on him. These kinds of actions have no place in ordinary relationships. The way JUNGKOOK reacts is that of someone who feels that what he has is his, who doesn't want to share even a second of the spotlight. If this were simply camaraderie, there wouldn't be tension in his eyes or sudden shifts in energy. And most tellingly, Taehyung doesn't back away. On the contrary, he stays close, sometimes even smiling as if he understands exactly what's going through Jungkook's mind. There are times when Jungkook physically positions himself between Taehyung and another person. Sometimes with a hand on their shoulder, other times with a serious expression that needs no explanation. And when that happens, Taehyung doesn't reject it. He accepts that presence is part of something that unites them. That attitude speaks to a relationship that doesn't need open declarations because everything is said with actions. This is something you only see in people who consider each other. A deep, intimate, and silent bond that grows stronger with every moment. Jungkook makes it clear that Taehyung isn't everyone's. Something that has always caught Taehyung and Jungkook's attention is the way they understand each other without speaking. They can be in a crowded room, with loud music, with cameras pointed at them, and they still manage to look at each other and understand each other. You don't need to listen to what they're saying, because often they don't even say anything. What connects them is something else. There are glances that last a little longer than usual. There are smiles that occur for no apparent reason. There are touches that aren't accidental. This is what Taehyung and Jungkook have observed for years, a connection that shows in the details. This way of communicating without speaking isn't learned. It's not acted out. It only happens when something very strong is happening between two people. And this isn't something new. In many old recordings, concerts, or interviews, you can see it. When one is uncomfortable, the other knows it without having to say it. When one needs support, the other appears, without anyone calling. When one laughs, the other follows them with their eyes. This isn't done out of habit, it's done because there's something real about it. Sometimes people who don't want to accept what's happening between them try to say that it's all part of a plan. That these are prepared gestures. But if they were part of a script, they'd be the same all the time. And that's not the case. There are times when their closeness increases for no apparent reason. There are situations that make no sense if they were seen as a spectacle. Because why hug each other so naturally if it's not out of a real impulse? Why seek each other out in the midst of so many if there's no need to be together? This kind of communication isn't easy to see in others. Even in groups that have been together for many years, you don't find that same way of understanding each other in silence. That's what makes the relationship between Taehyung and Jungkook stand out so much. They don't rely on words to express what they feel. They do it through simple, yet meaningful, gestures. There's a very clear respect between them. It's not just physical closeness. It's a constant attention, as if each always knows where the other is. As if it were important to stay close, even when no one asks for it. Taehyung doesn't need to talk to know what's happening to Jungkook. And Jungkook doesn't need to explain anything for Taehyung to understand. That's the foundation of their relationship. The gestures between Taehyung and Jungkook go far beyond a greeting or a simple display of affection. They are constant actions that only occur between two people who are united by something stronger. When they are close, there is no doubt about how they behave. They touch without fear, approach without hesitation, and look at each other with confidence. These actions are not forced. They are born from a routine they have shared for a long time. There is a big difference between an arm gesture and one that comes from instinct. When Taehyung touches Jungkook's shoulder, or when Jungkook brushes Taehyung's hand, they are not waiting for reactions from the public. They are not looking for cameras. They do it as if it were part of their way of being together. These are gestures that have been repeated so often that they no longer surprise those who follow Taehyung. For Taehyung fans, this is nothing new. It's something they have noticed on many occasions. When analyzing these moments, the first thing to keep in mind is their frequency. An action repeated in different places and at different times can't be considered an accident. If every time they're together, their bodies approach each other in the same way, if their hands reach for each other, if their gestures remain the same, then that speaks of a real bond. No one repeats the same actions with another person just out of habit. Much less when they're so close. Some try to say that what they do is part of a job or so-called fan service. But when two people understand each other without speaking, when there's no need to show anything because what they feel is obvious, then those gestures can't be explained as acting. Real couples understand each other without planning what they're going to do. That's exactly what happens with Taehyung and JUNGKOOK. They're used to living like this. Their way of communicating is based on small, but meaningful movements. In every video featuring Taehyung and JUNGKOOK, there's something that's immediately apparent: the way they reach out for each other, even without speaking. It's as if there's an invisible connection between them that tells them exactly how to move. One moves forward, and the other follows. One turns, and the other is already turning in the same direction. There's no need to speak, no outward signs. Everything they do seems to come from a silent agreement that only they understand. These gestures aren't casual. It's not a coincidence repeated many times. It's a pattern, an emotional choreography they've developed over time and that appears in all kinds of situations, interviews, concerts, behind the scenes. Even when they're surrounded by other people, when they're together, they behave as if no one else is there. As if their world consists only of the two of them. The most striking thing is how this connection occurs so naturally. It's not forced or exaggerated. JUNGKOOK can reach out a hand without saying anything, and Taehyung takes it. Taehyung might sit in a distant spot, and JUNGKOOK gets up to be by his side. These movements aren't practiced, they're not planned. They're genuine reactions born from a relationship that no longer needs words to function. When a person feels comfortable enough to act without filters, to trust 100% in the other's response, it's because there's a deep history between them. In this case, Taehyung and JUNGKOOK demonstrate that history exists with every interaction. They're not seeking attention, they're not forcing scenes. They're simply themselves. Two people who understand each other just by looking at each other, who accompany each other every step, and who don't need explanations to be in the same rhythm. This way of moving together, of acting in sync, is constant proof that there's more between them than closeness. It's a real, strong, and evident bond. It's impossible to watch those scenes and think it's something common. The way they seek each other out, care for each other, and follow each other, even when they don't need to, says more than any public declaration. And with each appearance together, that connection becomes clearer.